Now, we featured earlier in the program in Lefties celebrities losing their teeny tiny minds, from Richard Gere to Ariana Grande to something called Bad Bunny. Hollywood is not relenting one bit. They're happy to ignore or even condemn more than half the country. There's a real disconnect between the celebrity media class and reality. How sustainable is that, Josh?
Well, it's not sustainable. I mean, at some point, there's going to have to be a market correction, right? I mean, this is how market forces work. Is that when there are a lot of people demanding something and there's not supply, then naturally there's going to be some suppliers there. Now, there have been some folks, Rita. I think you and I are both big country music fans. You know, there have been some country music stars, for instance, who have kind of gone out of their way to try to console Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, Jason Aldean, Morgan Wallen, among others. There, so there's something of a counterculture in the music space, at least. There's something of counterculture developing there. Certainly, the NFL has very much put its foot in its mouth, the National Football League, in deciding that Bad Bunny is going to be the Super Bowl halftime show next year. Now, for what it's worth, I actually was pleasantly surprised by Bad Bunny's cameo performance in Happy Gilmore 2 when he was Adam Sandler's caddy. I thought that was kind of an enjoyable role for him there. But I don't like it when Bad Bunny opens his mouth about politics, because he's typically preaching a vehemently anti-ICE, pro-anarchy, anti-law enforcement, anti-nation state, frankly, in many ways, just anti-Western civilization message. So if the National Football League, which is by far America's most popular sport, if they're trying to find a unifying cultural figure, which is probably a good idea in a moment like the Super Bowl, the most watched event in America, if not the whole world there, you probably want to find someone who's not going to alienate and tick off, frankly, half the country there. He's not a very good choice for that, is he there? So a massive unforced error by the National Football League. But, you know, this is a sporting league that still has end racism emblazoned in the end zones as a throwback to George Floyd, our dearly departed martyr from the summer of 2020. So they haven't really learned a whole lot of lessons, have they?
No, they are slow learners, and not only picking this activist, but it's an activist who is not exactly a household name. I don't think most football fans are going to be overly familiar with Bad Bunny's music. So, you know, it's supposed to be an honour that goes to the cream of the crop, the very best musicians in the industry. And this one is definitely a strange choice. Now, we were talking about political violence before. Virginia's Democratic nominee for Attorney General, Jay Jones, is being backed by key Democrats despite his horrific text messages being exposed, where he said just shocking things, Josh, including hoping former Republican House Speaker Todd Gilbert's children would die. And he also said that such grief might be a good thing if it advanced his politics. This is just when you think you can't be shocked anymore, you're shocked.
You know, I think, Rita, that a lot of folks on the left, when we on the right, when we say that some folks on the left actually want us dead, like they literally want to kill us, a lot of them say, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? I mean, what kind of monsters do you think we are there?" Well, this is who we think you are. I mean, this is literally who we think you are.
Yeah.
Is that people who have Freudian slips, or maybe it's not even a Freudian slip, actually. Maybe they're just saying it out in the open for the simple reason that they happen to believe it, that they actually want their political opponents to be dead. I mean, this is the natural consequence of a worldview that has no room, to kind of get back to our earlier conversation, for a biblical, godly worldview that has no room for the Genesis 1:27 notion that we are all human beings made in the image of God, that we all have human dignity and self-worth, that we're entitled to have differences of opinions when it comes to taxation policy or social credits or this or that there. That doesn't mean that we deserve to die for our political views there. But when you forsake God and the transcendental, and when you also, again, equate speech with violence, you're going to get to a very, very, very unhealthy place there. This guy really, really, really should get out of the race. I think the most appalling thing, Rita, as you alluded to, is that I can't identify a single big name Democratic figure who has encouraged him to do so yet. That is really, really troubling. Surely there is at least one senior elder statesman in the Democratic Party who can look at this soberly and say, that's not what we're about there. But thus far, Rita, that person has not yet arisen.
Well, Virginia's Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears had this to say about Jay Jones and the Democrats' hateful, violent rhetoric.
The calls for hate and violence are coming from the mouths of the Democrat party's leaders. And Jay Jones is just the most recent, and his wish for violent acts the most clear. So if you can't solve a problem, you can't name it, but I will. And here and now, the leadership of the Democrat Party has become consumed with hate.
And Winsome Sears also called out the Democrat leadership, who are also guilty of inciting violence.
Try to name a Democrat leader who hasn't called the president Hitler. Try to name one who hasn't said Republicans and our policies are an existential threat to democracy. No, I am not saying Democrat leaders are committing violence, although Jay Jones fantasizes about murdering Republican children.
Josh, we really haven't seen a change in tone from the left after the assassination attempts against Donald Trump, and even after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They have continued with this rhetoric, labelling their political opponents fascists, threats to democracies, modern-day Hitlers, knowing that their supporter base, certainly segments of it, are prone to acts of violence.
Correct. And I think back to Pennsylvania. I think back to the Butler, Pennsylvania, July 2024, when Donald Trump moves his head a millimeter one direction and miraculously escapes an assassin's bullets by literally millimeters there. And that in theory would have been the moment for the left to look in the mirror and to call out their own shock troops, their grassroots thugs, the Antifa street thug wing of the movement of the party, and say, this is enough. Enough is enough already there. We are going to compete with Republicans. We're going to compete with Trump, compete with MAGA at the ballot box when it comes to the battle of ideas, in the battle of written op-eds and videos, whatever there. But we're not going to get involved when it comes to knives and swords and rifles and bullets there. That would have been the moment there. They didn't do that. They literally did not do that. So I'm not the least bit surprised that they have not done that in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's horrific death, because they've already shown that they have no interest in doing so. More generally, Rita, I think back to the 2024 election, just a few months after Donald Trump miraculously survived, well, I guess both of the attempted assassinations, but especially the one in Butler, Pennsylvania there. And Democrats, of course, lost all 7 swing states. They lost all the Sun Belt swing states, all 4 of them, all 3 of the Rust Belt swing states there. Now, here we are coming up on 1 year after the November 2024 general election there. Just as they have not changed their tune at all when it comes to political violence, have they learned a single substantive lesson when it comes to public policy? Have they actually changed their stance on a single issue of the various culture war issues that they lost so badly at the ballot box on last November, when it comes to open borders and immigration, when it comes to transgenderism, when it comes to crime, when it comes to Antifa, ICE? Far from it. Look at Portland, Oregon right now. The Portland police is literally not protecting federal facilities from anti-ICE anarchic protesters there. It's insane. They have learned absolutely nothing whatsoever. And unless and until they do so, at best, they're going to keep on losing election after election. At worst, they're going to get more people killed.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.